So, welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my sexual life. There's a place to be for education about asexuality. So, subscribe and hit that bell icon right now. I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. And I am an asexual person myself. I lack sexual attraction. And so I don't experience the need, urge, or want for partner sexual intercourse. And I like watching movies that have zero sex in them. And so I do no sex movie reviews. And tonight or whatever time it is where you are, I'm reviewing Night of the Apocalypse. So if you don't want spoilers, please do not watch this video. So let's jump into it. Now, I usually don't like horror movies, right? And when I looked on Wikipedia, it basically classes this movie as a comedy horror film. And so I was quite shocked they classify it as a horror in the sense that it's not what I would call horror, but I understand. And so I usually don't like horror, but I can actually stomach this because it's an animation. And I know lots of asexual people seem to love horror. So I think you'll love this movie review. There will be spoilers. So please, like I said, don't watch this video. If you don't want spoilers, watch it after you've seen the movie. So Night of the Apocalypse, what is it about? So I've seen this movie twice now, and I have to say, I think it's really good for the following reasons, right? So the movie starts off, there's a meteorite that hits an animal park, like a massive zoo. And they are in a zoo. All these animals are in a zoo, and obviously they have a lot of visitors and things like that to the zoo, although it looks a bit sparse. I thought they could have had a few more. But anyway, it's closing time at the zoo in like the beginning of the movie. And what happens is a meteor hits the zoo, and inside the meteor is got a virus, basically. The bunny in the petting corner is eating, and stuff comes out of this meteorite and basically starts eating the meteorite, the bits coming out of the meteorite, and it gets a virus. And then it turns into like a zombie bunny. And then from that one bunny, it goes in this pod. And it's like this massive pod with this arm around it, this one like arm. And it kind of like goes in there and is in there. That's kind of its base as the zombie. And then it goes and spreads. It's like gooey stuff all over different animals in the park to turn them into zombie animals. So instead of them looking like innocent, sweet, cute, and everything else, they end up liking like, I'm gonna get you. And so the infection from the bunny, from the meteorite to the park, ends up spreading over the course of the movie throughout the park in different animals. And the whole point of the movie is you're to see if any of the actual animals survive and if they can solve this problem of changing the zombies back to actually the animals they were before the park opens the next day. So it's quite an intense movie, I found, in a good way. And you're like, which animals are going to get zombified and which ones aren't, which ones are going to try and fight for survival. But you've also got this like underlying storyline. So Gracie is a wolf and she's in a pack of wolves. And her the grandma wolf is trying to say, this is the beginning of the movie, to Gracie that you need to always be working as a pack, as a team. And you need to be ready for disasters, things that are happening that you don't expect. You need to be aware of these disasters and ready for them. And so she makes Gracie do training with the pack and say, and Gracie's like, oh, this is so boring. And the grandma's saying, don't trust other animals and always be prepared for disasters. And Gracie's like, nothing ever happens. We live in a zoo. And then that's when the meteorite hits shortly after that. And that's when the bunny ends up becoming a zombie bunny. And Gracie, there's a hole in the wall from this meteorite-like explosion. It creates a hole in the wall with the wolves. So Gracie comes out to look what's going on and finds in the barn with the bunnies, like this, it looks like a barn to me, this place where the bunnies are, including the zombie bunny. she finds the bunny and she finds the pod. And well, the bunny's supposed to be inside the pod as far as I know, because it eats the food that then ends up in inside the pod. I didn't really totally understand that bit, but I thought it was the pod that had come from the actual meteorite, that somehow this alien pod creature had become, like from space into the petting corner. But according to Wikipedia, like that's where the bunny goes to be, because you see the bunny eating its food and you see stuff coming out this pod, and that's how the bunny ends up being a zombie. So the pod must have come from outer space as far as I can tell. But anyway, so Gracie has to escape because the pod is coming after Gracie to claw it, to try and inject it with like its liquid stuff to turn it into a zombie. So Gracie breaks free, and then she has to try and survive, because what happens is a ranger comes along, a ranger in the park, and there's a big, like, I think it's a lion. Is it Dan the lion? I'm like, is it a lion or is it a tiger? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting here. Mountain lion, that's what it's called, right? So when she emerges from the pod, so a zombie arm emerges from a pod and attacks her. This is Gracie. She narrowly escapes, this is according to Wikipedia, only to come face to face with a new animal, a gruff mountain lion named Dan. Right. So yes. And anyway, the zookeeper sees them, Dan and Gracie, together and tranquilizes them both, and they end up in cages in like this veterinary room of the zoo, and in there they meet this lemur, and this lemur it's quite a funny scene. I think this is funny. The lemur basically pretends to do things so that it ends up in the sick bay so it can watch TV and flick through the TV. So it's now broken its tail, is the latest thing it's done. It's got its tail like in a plaster, and it's flicking through the TV, and it's like it's the only way it can get out of its cage and be around humans in the veterinary center and be able to live like a more extravagant lifestyle, if you like. So Dan and Gracie are not getting on well because Gracie's a wolf and Dan's a mountain lion, and mountain lions tend to eat most stuff, and mountain lions usually belong in the wild, right? And so the only reason Gracie and Dan ended up being tranquilized together is because Gracie came out and escaped from the barn where the pod was and then ran into Dan, and then Dan and her ended up like ended up in a kerfuffle together where there was like a rope that came down and something fell outside the barn, and they ended up being tied up to pieces of rope together. It's a funny scene. You'd have to watch it to understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's how they get tranquilized and end up in the veterinary surgery place, part of the zoo, with this lemur. But this lemur is so funny because it's getting high on like oxygen. It's getting high off it and stuff like that. And it looks like oxygen to me. I mean, it could be pain relief, but it looks like it's oxygen to me. Anyway, it's broken its tail on purpose so that it literally is able to watch the TV and flick through the TV channels. Now, the TV in this is relevant because there's like a story within a story going on. So the lemur watches all these stories about zombies, and then throughout the movie, he ends up commentating, like saying, this is what happens in an actual horror movie. This is what happens in a zombie movie. And this is what happens next. As the zoo is being zombified. Is that the right word? Zombified? As the zoo is being zombified, it sounds cool, so let's go with it. Then what's happening is he starts reenacting the acts of a zombie movie and say, oh, this is what happens next. So it's kind of like he's a commentator within the actual movie itself. I thought it was quite clever, actually. So anyway, they're all in this veterinary surgery area together, and then all of a sudden bursts in a monkey that's left its monkey enclosure because all of its fellow monkeys in there, I was going to say monkey friends, they've all been turned into zombies. The last one trusted him, though. The big gorilla really trusted this monkey that they were friends and going to get out together. And this monkey's like every man or every animal for himself and leaves the gorilla. And so this monkey, along with an ostrich, managed to get to the veterinary center eventually. But first of all, what happens is the lemur lets Gracie out, but they don't let Dan out, the mountain lion. So Gracie and the mountain lion Dan, they were both in cages because that's what the ranger put them in after she tranquilized them. But the lemur is on the like the bed, like the sick bay bed, like the where veterinary surgery, when you go in and they've got like the table, the dreaded table, right? So it's like that. They got the table and the lemur's on there with its sniffing up the gas or oxygen or whatever's in there, flicking through the movies with the remote control. So the lemur is the one that's free roaming, if you know what I mean. And the zookeepers are gone for the night. So he lets Gracie out. And then Dan's like, you'd be better letting me out because I can help you with the zombies, And anyway, the ostrich and the monkey come in and they end up being in the same room. And so Dan's like, he's the only one, the mountain lion, that's caged up in the end. And they're like, he's like, let me go. And she's like, they're like, no, because the ostrich, it's really funny. The ostrich comes with his bum and starts waving it, going, oh, like, aren't you tempted? And the lion's trying not to be tempted, but a lion eats an ostrich. So the lion is the ostrich is trying to tempt the lion to get it to confess that if they let it out, it would try to eat them. So, which it basically does, like, eventually say about how good it would be to eat, or some comment similar to that. Don't hold me to the exact comment. And so, anyway, what happens is the zombies manage to break into the veterinary center, and the lemur, along with the ostrich and the monkey, they've all gone off down like this corridor, and to try and get away from the zombies that are coming in, trying to break down the door to the veterinary center. And Gracie ends up taking Dan with her because Dan ends up tranquilized somehow again, I believe. Yeah, ends up tranquilized somehow with a tranquilizing dart. I can't remember how that happened, who did that or how it happened. But anyway, so Gracie ends up taking the mountain lion with her down the corridor and shutting the door on the zombies that have got through and broken into the veterinary center. So down like this massive like corridor, there's the monkey, the ostrich, there's the lemur, and then Gracie is tagging along behind with Dan, who's got a tranquilizing dart in his butt, basically. And she bargains with him and saying, can you be my bodyguard if I take the tranquilizing dart out and save your life from getting zombified? So he's like, no. And then he's like, yeah. And then there's like funny scenes where for some reason there's this pink like duck or something, and it's like a squeaky toy, and down the corridor, and one of the animals has literally pressed it. I think it's the monkey by accident, not realizing. And then this other creature, well, it's not a creature, it looks like a creature because it's zombified. It looks like, I think it would be like a deer or something, or some sort of type of, looks like a deer, or I don't actually know what creature that was normally, but anyway, it's a park animal. And it's actually down another, like, it's off the T-junction, if you like, of the corridor. Anyway, here's this squeaky toy, and then it tries to come after them. And then the squeaky toy ends up putting the squeaky toy behind this pipe, and chucking it down this pipe, so that the animal ends up putting its head down the pipe and they can get away from it. And then meanwhile, this pink duck, this like squeaky toy, goes through to Dan and Gracie. So at some points they end up like getting split up as well, so that it just ends up the ostrich and the lemur and the monkey being in this zoo shop. I'm leaving some details out so I don't tell you everything. But they end up in this shop together, and this is a lemur when the lemur's starting saying, oh, this is act 1 finished, and then we're going into act 2, and they're like, what happens in act 2? And it's like, oh, and he's giving like really dramatic consequences to what would happen in act 2 of a movie. And it's like he's commentating on what's happening to them at the zoo being like a zombie movie, and he's equating it to that. So it's like telling the story of what actually has happened at the zoo, but it's from fictional movies he's seen. I hope that makes sense. Nice to see, by the way. Thanks for the thumbs up. So I really, really liked this movie because I thought it was very colourful. And I thought the zoo animals were really good with their own personalities, if you like. And I like the fact that, I don't know, it's a bit of a Indiana Jones, maybe. I don't know. An apocalypse Indiana Jones. I don't know if that is even a real thing. But basically, they have to try and work as a team to get out. And because the animals are smaller, everything else seems bigger. So when they're in the shop, they get quite freaked out by all the cuddly toys and everything. And they think the cuddly toys are like things that are going to get them. But then they realize that they're actually in the shop where, people come and buy gifts and souvenirs. But the park's closed. And then the lemur starts eating popcorn. So it's like the lemur is commentating on the situation they're in, being like a horror movie and eating popcorn at the same time to it, which is quite ironic and funny. But it's like everyone else is all the park animals are getting turned into zombies, and he's there lapping up the popcorn and things like that. And then he's then creating suspense, saying, like there's a disaster about to happen and things like this. So the movie centers around what happens with these animals. Like, do they get out of the situation? How do they get out of the situation? Do they work together as a team? And the fight, like towards the final act, if you like, as he's starting to talk about the final act, there's like a betrayal in it. So you get animals that like betray each other and things like that. It's a bit like survival of the fittest. And they have to find out how to turn the whole park back into non-zombies. Now, there is another animal that comes into it called Poot. And Poot is so cute. Poot is a pygmy hippo. And it's an infant. And it's this little pink pygmy hippo. And I think what they did in this movie is to lighten the mood from it being like a bit dark with the sense that, the park animals are turning into zombies. I think they brought this in to add some lightness to the movie. So Poot is a pygmy hippo, but Poot sees everything as fun. It doesn't understand what's going on. It's talking to the wolf and it's talking to the lion, who are working together by this point. Because remember, the wolf saved the lion's life and took the tranquilizing dart out of it and pulled it away from all the zombies that had got through to the veterinary center. And Dan the lion, in return, is meant to be the bodyguard. So they enter this pool of like balls, the plastic balls, the fun balls you see at kids' parks. They enter this pool of balls and they think there's like a zombie creature in there. But this is how Poot emerges. And it's like, hey, I'm Poot. And this little voice, and it's like playing around in the balls. And he doesn't realize what's going on. It's like there's zombies everywhere. It's real loads of danger. But it's like an infant child that doesn't understand. It just thinks everything's fun and it's all a game to it. So you've got the contrast between this pygmy hippo that's really sweet and innocent and really just having fun and doesn't understand what's going on. Contrast with the adult animals that are like, this is really serious, like we've got to solve this problem, otherwise just every one of us will be wiped out and there'll be none of us left. We'll all be zombies. And so I thought it was really good. Poot is so cute. It's one of those type of animated characters you just want to take home with you, if you know what I mean. It's so cute. And it's so like sweet and innocent all the time. And it's like, hi, I'm Poot. And a part of the movie, it's like, oh, I'm a wolf. And it's like, I don't think I'm supposed to talk to wolves. And that's what Poot says. And then the other one says, I'm a lion. And he's like, I'm definitely not supposed to talk to lions because my parents told me not to talk to like strangers and not to talk to these. And then one of them, figuratively speaking, says, oh, they're like a snake. It's like, snake? I definitely mustn't talk to a snake. Like that's not good for me. And so I thought this was really lighthearted. It's something I didn't expect, actually. I didn't expect them to put this pretty little pink pig in there. But I thought it kind of added to the flavor and gave it a bit of lightness to the movie and a bit more comedy, because Poot's like, oh, let's play, and then so the wolf and the mountain lion, they kind of ended up looking after Poot, but the lion didn't want to. It's like this Poot is like collateral damage, because they just think everything is a game. They talk loudly because they're playing, and they're just going like like messing around. And it's like, when they draw attention to them, obviously the animals come after them, the zombie animals come after them to try to change them into zombies, so they're in danger constantly. But Poot doesn't understand this. Poot's just like, this is fun, it's a game. So Wolf says, oh yeah, but if things go wrong and we get hungry, we'll need something to eat later. So the wolf convinces the lion to take Poot along anyway, because with the premise that they'll eat Poot if things like, if they get hungry later. But the wolf is not really like that. Gracie the wolf is really kind-hearted and does seem to really care. She's not really into eating things like that. So really that Gracie doesn't really mean that. She's trying to get Dan to have a reason to take Poot with them. So they end up looking after Poot a lot, and Poot ends up keeping like playing and talking loudly, so then that puts him in a lot of danger throughout the movie. But I thought the movie was really good. I thought it was funny in places. I thought all the different animals were very interesting, and I'm going to spoil it for you now. Like, there's the latter part of the movie, it gets a bit insane and crazy, but in a really funny way. So basically what happens is like, they end up eventually like that. All these animals are zombies, right? There's a monkey that leaves the ostrich and the lemur, and basically is trying to escape and get out of the zoo, and just turns on them, like leaves them there. And then Dan is always having the ulterior motive of going from the park. He doesn't want to be there either, right? He doesn't want to be in the park. But once they try to escape, one or both of them, there is a zombie surprise waiting for them, shall I say. So all does not go according to plan. And anyway, so what happens is Gracie is really the hero of this whole movie, along with the animals that are left at the end to help her. So what happens is, there's, I told you about the gorilla. The gorilla turns into a zombie. Now the gorilla is kind of a central zombie piece in the whole movie. And what happens is, when it gets its arm or its head cut off, it just regroups. It has all these body parts that are like splayed everywhere, and then it just regroups them and comes back into the gorilla again. So it doesn't really die. It can't really kill it, and then trying to kill it, and it just keeps coming back. So even if it's like got a head in the wrong place, a head on top of an arm or something. I mean, instead of a body, it'd be on top of an arm or something. Do you know what I mean? It's the wrong way around. It's just like, it's like, how many times can you kill the gorilla as a zombie but doesn't actually die? And so the Poot, and this is towards the end of the movie, because I don't want to give you every single little detail, but towards the end of the movie, like Poot and Gracie and the lion, Dan, they all end up in a cable car together. And the gorilla, this gorilla zombie, is on top of the cable car, and it's rocking them, and Poot is on the top, and Poot's trying to like be playful, because Poot doesn't understand. Poot is like playing around the cable car and going in, like swinging on the door and stuff like this. So you've got the zombies that are really doing serious stuff and are trying to like make every animal zombified and get Grace and Dan to become a zombie. And then you've got Poot that's just messing around and not realizing what's going on, but she's actually helping them inadvertently. And so what happens is, they do get free of the cable car, but Dan, have you guessed it? Dan becomes a zombie. The mountain lion becomes a zombie, and it's like, uh-oh, it's not good. It's not good. So I'm going to spoil it for you again. So what happens is, Gracie ends up in a massive fight with Dan. It's kind of like what you've been waiting for in the whole movie, really, because these two are kind of like trying to be friends, but they're kind of enemies at the same time, because like the mountain lion tries to overpower the wolf, and and they try and, you know, they got a battle going on because like of kind of like for strength and stuff like that. But Gracie's got a kind heart, whereas Dan just wants to get out of the zoo. He's quite selfish, really, throughout a lot of the movie. Not all of it, but a lot of the movie. He's quite selfish. And Gracie calls him out on that, saying, you know, you're just a coward, basically, because he wants to leave the park and leave everyone there and just go for his own benefit, you know, and just leave them because he's like, I don't want to be in a zoo. This is my chance to escape. And he gets a pass from Gracie that allows him to get out of the zoo. But all does not go according to plan with that. I'm not going to say everything for that. And Gracie is left with Poot when literally Dan ends up being a zombie. And so it's very difficult. So I'm going to spoil it because I really want to say stuff to this movie because I really like the movie. It's really fun. And so what happens is Dan becomes a zombie and Gracie and him are fighting and she's trying to stop him from making her a zombie. Then there's a radio that's playing because this is like the quarters of the staff quarters, if you like. And he ends up going in the sink with a pile of soap suds and water with this music playing on the radio. And then Gracie watches him transform back to himself. He's no longer a zombie. So she thinks the answer to curing the whole park of being zombified, apart from the few of them that are left, is to get loads of soap suds, like loads of soap flakes from around the whole park. There's a place in the zoo that keeps these soap flakes. Get them, get a mound of water, which they set up other zombies to be able to achieve, which was incredible. I didn't understand what they were doing at first, but they get this like big massive water tank, and they get the way they construct what they do. They get one of the animals to like push this down. All the water gushes down, and they get all the zombies. They risk their own life to get all these zombies in a specific area outside, and they put all the soap suds all over them. And they wait and they think, this is great. You know, we're free of zombies now. This is wonderful. It's worked. It's great. Yay. Everything's good. And then it happens. All the zombies have amalgamated together under the soap suds and would come up in one massive, like, monster zombie at the end. It is massive and huge. Overpowers everything. And even poor little Pooh ends up turning into a zombie. And I'm not going to tell you the rest. I'm going to leave it as a cliffhanger for you to find out what happens. But clearly the soap suds didn't work. The soap and water did not work. It didn't work at all. But it's just really massive, this monster at the end. It's huge and huge and huge and huge. It's like really, really massive. And you're like, oh my God. So it did the opposite. Instead of disempowering all the zombies and turn them back into park animals, instead it created a massive monster by amalgamating them all together. But I'm not going to tell you how it ends because I want you to go and watch the movie. It's really, 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 really good. I really liked it. I don't like horror movies, but it's classed as a horror comedy animation movie. But I don't like horror movies. Usually I can't stand them, but I was fine with it. Like this is the second time I've watched the movie. I liked it that much because I just love the way it's made. Like, I love the action in it. I think it's quite reasonably fast-paced enough. It's got comedy moments. And I think with the lemur giving the commentary about what happens in like a zombie movie, and it's like they're in one and it's happening in the zoo and he's talking about it in real time, I think it adds kind of a real sense of like suspense, a bit like murder mystery type of suspense, even though they've been changed into zombies, not actually killed as well. Obviously, they've been killed as they've been transformed, I should say. But you could argue that they've been killed off in their former animal state because they're zombies. But obviously, the whole point is they want to change them back. And Dan did get changed back. But how Gracie thought that happened with the soap and water was not actually true. So they have to find out and work out, like, how did Dan, the mountain lion, actually get to change back out of his zombie state, because then they have to try and work out how to do that with the rest of the park. So Do they do it or do they not? You will have to watch it, but it's really, really good. I like the action. I like Gracie, the character. I think they really did a good job of the main wolf character. I like the way they did her because she looks very pleasing. She doesn't look like a aggressive wolf or anything like that. She just looks very placid and hair flowing. And do you know what I mean? She's got curiosity about her. She's got a kind heart about her. And she really cares about other animals in the park. And then you've got, the park animals that try and, like just are out for themselves and things like that. And then you get like the other ones that are just kind of teaming up together. And I liked it. It's got a lot of elements of classic like movies, really, but blended into an animation. And, I thought I might be quite worried about the zombie bit, the horror type of bit. I thought it would quite bug me, but it doesn't actually bother me, which I was quite surprised about. I think it's because a lot of the park animals are kind of cute. Some of them, even in their zombie state, are not actually that bad in terms of the way they look. And it was tolerable for me like that. And I was so focused on Gracie and the good aspects of it. I guess that far outweighed the zombies, even though the zombies were far outweighing the good animals that were left, if you know what I mean. And Poot was adorable. Everyone should have a little Poot, the pygmy hippo. So cute. I'm like, this is just so cute. You should just watch the whole movie for the little Poot. It's really funny. I like its name as well. My name's Poot. It's so sweet and innocent. So I really loved it. And so I'd highly recommend going to see it if you get a chance to see Night of the Zoopocalypse. It's really, really good. I thought it was an interesting storyline, especially to put in a zoo. I had not seen that in a zoo setting before. So I liked that. I thought it was quite original. And I like going to zoos for real, but not, I don't want to go to a zombie zoo. I might make that clear. But yeah, so there's no sex in it, which is good. No animals having sex, thank God, because I'm asexual and I personally don't like sex in movies. But even in some kids animations, I've heard them say sexual comments and sexual innuendo, and I'm like, and animals like, talking about animals like having that, and I'm like, why does it need to be in there? It's a kids movie. It really doesn't need to be in there. But yeah, there was none of that in there, thank God. No romantic animals either. Do you know what I mean? So if you're an asexual person who doesn't experience romance, you got no kissy animals in there, no animals pairing up in a romantic partnership. They have to work as a team for camaraderie and work together basically, and work as a team and come from different like backgrounds and things like that. So I think any asexual person who's not interested in sex and just wants like a camaraderie flavor to a movie would be very interested in this movie. Obviously there's a theme of I always like to dive into the themes. There's a theme of like Gracie kind of discovering more about herself and her world around her, and it not, her nan was, her Grammy, I was going to say fox then, Grammy Wolf, who kind of leads her pack. She was right about the fact that, disasters can happen, including in the zoo as well. So she's, she kind of understands and goes on a journey throughout the movie, understanding that packs are very important. She didn't really understand why her pack was important and why the teamwork's necessary, and she thought like kind of all this pack was bonding together was a bit of nonsense. But as she goes throughout the movie, she discovers why it's important to have that kind of base, if you like, that foundation of support and understanding. So I think this is reflective of like life. If you find a support system that works, rather than like poo-pooing it away and thinking, oh, like it's not really relevant to me. I think if you lean into that, you can understand that support system is very important. And also, when the animals come together, again, it's all about supporting each other, about connection, supporting each other and working together as a team for the greater good of the whole community. And I think that's something that people can take into real life and reflect on. It's like if people work together for the greater good and use their skills, each individual skills, to create the best situations in life, then that is actually a really good thing. When people value each other, when people respect each other and they work together. You see in the movie what happens when one of the animals doesn't, it tries to get, well, there's two animals that try to get out the zoo before the rest, and you see what happens to, you know, at least one of them. And it's not good for them because they thought they were clever and could outsmart the rest of them. They were being very selfish and self-centered. So I think this is really good in the movie because it's saying that if you're self-centered and you think of yourself and you want to get ahead of others by, you know, like basically climbing over the top of others, it's not a good thing, and you can be a loser because of that. It doesn't always work out in your favor doing that. And actually, if you stuck to the original plan, you'd have come out better in the end, and you'd have been more honest as well. So I think there's like themes in this. Like I said, I always like to dive into themes of movies, not just see the surface level stuff. And you know, Gracie goes on a journey. She goes on a journey from, you know, like not appreciating what she's got in her family pack to understanding by the end of it that family and connection and being with those you trust and believe in and work with is one of the most important things in life, because it's only when you work together as a team can you overcome like hardships and difficulties in life. And so I think that's really good. I think it's a very good, important theme in the movie. So yeah, please give it a watch. I love Night of the Apocalypse, but in the zoo form, Night of the Zoopocalypse. And I definitely would recommend it. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for asexual entertainment, education, information, lifestyle videos. I'll see you soon on the next video or live stream. Lots of love. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.